Welcome to the Backlash at backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to read and comment on excerpts from my 1992 article, Cycles of Bigotry, Cycles of Sexism. In 1991, the second wave feminist rape culture was on the rise when I wrote this and outlined the cycle. Because second wave feminism is rooted in Marxism, which embraces the concept of social cycles, they did not want to hear this. They knew it was true, and it made them angry. In 1991, we were very aware we were participating in a historic effort, so the language is a little pretentious, but when we're dealing with totalitarian thugs like feminists, neoconservatives, and neoliberals, sounding pretentious is often better than ranting because we already know they will react poorly. And we don't want to give them any excuses for their violence. Here now, Cycles of Bigotry, Cycles of Sexism. 1991, Bellevue, Washington. Life moves in cycles. From the smallest microbe to the infinite universe, we all dance to cyclic rhythms. Sometimes these cycles are obvious, like the four seasons or the tides, they shape our lives. But others, like the ebb and flow of the polar ice caps, the alignment of the planets, and the global warming, we know only after centuries of study and observation. They're hard to see. There are social cycles too, like gargantuan hearts. They pump thoughts, ideas, attitudes, and impressions, the blood of our culture. Vaguely, most of us are aware of these and sometimes refer to them as swinging pendulums. A good analogy to remind us that what is extreme today may be mainstream tomorrow, and yesterday's fashions will reemerge when everything old is new again. Economists and businesses rely on these cycles to know when to save or borrow, spend or invest, expand or sell out. Investors, too, study social psychology, drawing charts to predict the effects of human emotion on market swings and boom-bust cycles. See, for example, the Elliott Wave Principle, Key to Market Behavior by A.J. Frost and Robert Prechter. These are fairly obvious, and politicians work to flatten them out so that, instead of suffering ups and downs, we can enjoy predictable prosperity. Yeah, that's really worked out well. Sexual attitudes follow a cycle too. Skirts and hair are short or long, breasts are in or out, women are barracudas, men are predators, and now, in 1991, women are cougars. Popular wisdom now holds that men only want one thing. As recently as the 1960s, however, feminist icon Betty Friedan lamented how our culture believed women were the sexual predators and men were their prey. Before that, during the Victorian era, men were base and women were pristine. History, as Karl Marx noted, repeats itself. The cycles of sexual attitudes, as mapped out by the historian Ree Tannehill in her delightful book, Sex and History, has repeated itself in ancient Greece, Rome, Arabia, China, and India, and even among Native American cultures. This cycle of sexism is part of a larger cycle of bigotry and counter-bigotry. In one form or another, it's a pattern that has persisted for thousands of years. The bigot and the counter-bigot. The racist bigot says, if your skin is the wrong color, you're not good enough. The counter-bigot says, if you're racist, then you are not good enough. My sister says, stamp out violence, kill extremists. My sister's pretty smart. The cycle of bigotry and counter-bigotry is especially evident between the white and black American communities. During the 1960s, in response to racism, black individuals began programs of racial validation. Many of us older people remember watching a black man on television drilling a black youngster on "Black is beautiful." He kept saying, okay, say it, black is beautiful. And the little kid say, black is beautiful. Well, the child's mother watched with an expression of grim determination as the man instilled in her son a sense of racial pride. Black pride emerged from that program and others like it. Focused solely on blacks, however, they were unbalanced. The sense of pride they sought to instill in their children produced, in many cases, counter-bigots. If you're not black, you're not good enough. Only black is beautiful. Well, black is beautiful, possessing a character and quality not found in any other hue. But there is also beauty in skin that is pink, olive, and brown, all different, all good. By not teaching children to recognize, respect, and value the inherent worth in all people, regardless of race, such programs combined with legitimate demands for justice to imply that being white is inherently bad, and that the sins of whites long dead and also the sins of whites now living, that the sins of whites long dead are also the sins of whites now living. Shamed, the white community tried to mollify blacks by passing laws or instituting programs that attempted to level the field by lowering standards, as in college entrance requirements or through affirmative action programs by actively hiring and promoting women and minorities. By the way, as I've mentioned in other videos, I'm a member of the federally recognized Indian tribe. I served for almost 10 years on tribal council and several tribal committees and boards. And growing up, I experienced quite a bit of racism, but I have never taken advantage of any affirmative action programs. And at the University of Washington, when I went to the Minority Affairs office to, as I put it to the person there, ask about programs that I might be able to participate in, her response was, "We don't have anything for people like you." She was very contemptuous of it. That was the first, only, and last and only time that I've ever tried to take advantage of anything like that. Sometimes this had the effect of redirecting the discrimination toward white men or of alleviating black individuals of any responsibility for misbehavior. However accomplished, it is combining with counter-bigotry to stir up resentment among a growing number of working-class youths that is leading to a renewal of anti-black prejudice. According to June Stevenson, author of Men Are Not Cost-Effective, Male Crime in America, the hate crime rate in the U.S. is growing, most of it directed toward blacks. Now, I don't take June Stevenson as a credible authority, obviously, from the title of the book. Even the title was somewhat tongue-in-cheek. And as we are very aware today, in 2015, the application of claims about hate crimes is really easy to make if somebody even so much as disagrees with President Obama. They can risk being accused of a hate crime. So it's gone way off the extreme end here. And so I doubt that June Stevenson's statistics were correct. Black is beautiful. Black leaders of the 60s were right to shake up the complacency of the white community. There's a time for hostility, a time for anger, a time to march, and a time to cry. But when the major ideological disputes are resolved, it's time to put away the strategies, tactics, and emotions of confrontation and walk together down the avenues of cooperation. That's what most of the leaders of the black community have done and are doing. But cooperation is not a banner under which angry mobs can be rallied to form political power blocks. Cooperation requires communication, negotiation, consideration, reflection, knowledge, patience, and work. The emotional rewards are slow to come. Conversely and perversely, confrontation often provides more immediate emotional satisfaction, particularly when it involves giving up personal responsibility by blaming others for the problems of life. Some black pundits, like Jill Nelson, whom I met on a TV talk show, she's author of Volunteer Slavery, My Authentic Negro Experience, gain a following, pundits like Jill Nelson do, gain a following by indulging in such tactics. A growing number of feminists are, too, with their social and political assaults on men long after there is any need or justification for doing so. To be treated as equals in school and at work, many women needed to adopt an attitude of confrontation and demand that men accommodate them. Many men resisted, but many more accepted what was fair and inevitable, and women's legal status is now in many ways superior to men's. Conflict could have ended there to make way for a new era of cooperation and negotiation. Instead, feminist extremists carried the confrontation further to precipitate more and more antagonism toward men. In the muck of this misandristic malice, the seeds of a new misogyny have germinated and are taking root. Recently, a prominent member of the fathers' rights community began posting articles to the internet arguing that men are physically, mentally, and morally superior to women. On college campuses, male students are now discussing ways to use Title IX to kick feminism off their college campuses. And recently, when an ABC TV affiliate produced a show on deadbeat dads that was to feature a female fathers' rights lobbyist, a very capable one, an executive of Dads Against Discrimination, one of the largest fathers' rights organizations in the country, strongly objected and persuaded them to replace her with a man who, though far less capable of debating the issues rather, was preferable solely because he was a man. The cycle of sexism has come full circle. The misogyny of the 50s and 60s led to the androphobia of today, which in turn will produce an efflorescence of anti-female sentiments tomorrow. Is this backlash inevitable? Is there no way to stop the cycle and find some happy middle ground? Ending the cycle. We can end the cycle, but neither men nor women can do it alone. We must work together. In Male and Female, the classic study of the sexes, Margaret Mead asserted that once we have identified and analyzed this cycle, it should be possible to create a climate of opinion in which others, a little less the product of the dark past because they have been reared with a light in the hand that can shine backwards as well as forwards, may in turn take the next step. It's up to us to take that next step. Women must oppose all anti-male sexism just as vigorously as we expect men to oppose anti-female sexism. To the courageous feminists, and by that I mean the first-wave feminists, who brought modern sexism to our attention, we owe gratitude and respect. They opened our eyes. But their wise words have drowned beneath a deluge of strident voices, all clamoring to be heard, all shrilling one message. Men are to blame and must make restitution for all the misfortunes all women have ever suffered. Where we heard voices of reason, now we hear only rage and fear as feminist extremists work not to break the cycle of sexism but to reverse it. This is not what the pioneers of feminism sought. They were less interested in castigating men than in inspiring women to, as Lucretia Mott put it, be acknowledged moral, responsible beings with full civil and political rights. In a nation where women are increasingly afforded the right to fill combat positions in the military, while men are still denied the right to refuse combat positions, and women, but not men, have the legal right to refuse to become a parent, realization of the feminists' original goals is a historical fact that extremists refuse to acknowledge. And by extremists, today I would simply say feminists. Perhaps this is because few men have participated as men. Those who gained entrance to the cause were male feminists, what we today call manginas. They, like Ashley Montagu, author of The Natural Superiority of Women, found refuge and feminine approval in the aggrandizement of women and the denigration of men rather than in advocating a policy of same rights, same responsibilities. We need neither the conciliatory voices of male feminists nor the extremists' recriminations, but the strength and integrity of women and men working together to dismantle all the sexist barriers without blame if we are to create a more complete humanity and a finer state of being. So that was 1991. Here we are in 2015. MGTOW has only just really started to come into its own, and MGTOW is the backlash. In a short online exchange with Diana Davidson, I suggested that my perspective of MGTOW was that it was kind of like the Atlas Shrugged strike, where we're simply backing away. We're not marching down the streets. We're not causing any trouble. We're simply backing away. And this is borne out in the statistics. Several years ago, Time magazine came out with their first of eventually a few or 3 or 4 more cover articles talking about how women were saying no to marriage. Well, they were wrong, and I wrote an article, and one of these days I'll find it and read it, make a video out of it. It's actually men who are saying no to marriage. And we know this because if you look at the statistics on single never married versus single divorced, what you see is that there are more men, American men, Canadian men, British men, Australian men, men in the West, who are single never married, as opposed to women who are single divorced or single widowed. So it's men who have been saying no to marriage, and with good reason. Well, a lot's happened since 1991. Let me think. That's 24 years. Another 24 years from now, we might be in the throes of the what Ray Kurzweil calls the singularity. Everything could change. I'll have more to say about that in another video. But an awful lot can happen in 24 years. And while my grandparents died back in the 1980s. If they could come back today, they would recognize most of the world. I mean, smartphones are new, the cars are looking a little bit different, but I live in an apartment complex that, golly, is it 40 some odd years old, I think, housing the new homes. Of course, we've got McMansions with the goofy portices and things like that that are worthless and don't belong, really. They don't do anything. But most of the housing is still the same as it was back in the 80s when my grandparents died. My grandparents were in their 80s, almost 90 when they passed. And by and large, they would recognize the world of today. 24 years from now, however, my parents, they're both in their 80s, and they might be around then, but probably not. And I suspect that if they were to pass between now and then to come back, that they would not recognize the world that we will live in, because so much will have changed. Feminists wanted change until they got into power, and by and large, they are in power now. But things are going to change, and they don't want anything to change at this point. They like how things are. They are continuing their program against men to quash and quell and oppress men. But things are going to change. And their resistance to that could be violent. I do not advocate, like many others online, like Bern Chapin and Aaron Clary and Stefan Molyneux and a lot of the other guys whose videos I watch, Bane AU666, he's fun. None of us advocate violence. All of us want peaceful change. A time may come, however, when we need to defend ourselves, and you need to be prepared to defend yourself, and I'll have more to say about that in future videos. But for now, this video is long enough. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel for the Backlash at backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin.